This audio is titled The Absence of Color. At the end of this audio, after you listen, you will understand why, because I'll explain the title. But for now, I want you to listen. Now, the African American mind is easily controlled. This is a cause of the miseducation and the lack of proper education to the African American, and I'm about to explain why. I want to begin this presentation by asking you, when you look at the black race, what do you see? What do you see? What do you see? When another race looks at the black race, what do you think they see? Compare it to the perception of other races, the Asians, the whites, the Indians, or even the Mexican. The majority of African Americans need to understand that we need to be more educated in this race. We have to go outside of what we know and what these systemized schools teach us to excel as a race. We live in this reality where African Americans for the last few hundreds of years have dominated entertainment, which means we are entertaining. We need to wake up and realize that entertainment won't get us over the hump. Entertainers don't dictate the future. Our children learn from religion, physics, astronomers, chemists, geologists, law, and biologists. When you think of those categories, or when you think of dictating, you don't think of our race. The African American today should aspire on one another. We hate each other. We separate ourselves from each other. We hate our men. We hate our women. There is a large lack of love. I don't include myself in the destruction of African Americans. I don't include myself in exploitation. I want to lead by example. I don't mind supporting or partnering with other races as I have, but I would love to see my own people letting go and growing. The African American has this problem with they. I always hit the term they should do this or they should do that. Who is this they we always talk about? They have us all locked in a system. Let me give you some brief history. Through research, it is true that women from the African regions created math by studying the lunar process to figure out their menstrual cycle. They were the first people to actually count. They started counting by numbering days, and the men later revolutionized this process of counting and created math under the worship of the deity Mad. Now, these same concepts turned into solutions to figure out everyday life, and math was a process of solving every problem. These are the things that you're not taught in school. Think about the underestimating of the ancient Egyptians that were people who thought on a greater level of skill. The pyramids are perfect examples of advanced mathematics, and the same code, such as rules like a squared plus b squared equals c squared, or even pi or phi, and even geometrical codes we use today are found and followed through the history of African regions. You see, some of you never really saw pyramids, so your mind doesn't register its amazement. Understand that pyramids are not 10 feet tall, 30 feet tall. There are pyramids over 400 feet tall. At a time where there were no such things as planes or electricity or machines that we will use now, our ancestors, through the origin of mathematics and science, were capable of these creations. The European education system does not teach history properly. In America, our students are taught to perform and not to learn. Now, to perform means you're just taught to pass a test. To learn is self-explanatory. Look at the gap between the lower and upper class. Today's education system in the U.S. cripples our generations. If a student was actually taught to learn mathematics, why isn't it that they are taught where the origin of using numbers came from? In my opinion, I think the African Americans should purchase Vedic mathematic books and teach their children because Vedic mathematics is amazing and it's spelled VEDIC. The US has had the most money and resources, and our nation has still been outperformed through school testing. The founding fathers of America forced religion upon people and deleted the West Indian race. They were notorious slave owners and are famous for war. They're famous for ineffective education. They're famous for miseducation. The perception of the African American race today is presented by a media in the form of capitalism. It is not presented as the children of the original people nor the creator of general math and science. Think about this though. A major problem for the black community that I see is the problem with identity. That's the biggest problem. The biggest problem one may have is finding him or herself. The Chinese child is taught in a way to understand themselves and view learning through a Chinese form. The East Indian does the same. The African American has no origin. The beginning of their culture is the raping of an ancestor. There is no connection to identify with. There is no original language because their ancestors were not taught who their true ancestors were. The African American is a result of an African being manipulated and raped by a slave owner. If one was to understand their true history, they would understand how to love and identify themselves. An African American is a systemized race that does not understand why it's here and when to start living. The past few generations of African Americans has done well, but the only recognition is through celebrity. This is very dangerous and pollutes the mind. The race looks at celebrity as a form of a start in history. It is programmed to believe what is perceived. Even psychologically, an African American believes they are a Christian before they ever understand Christianity. I'm not a real religious man, but I do believe in God. But I think religion is a stabilizer. And it doesn't register to everyone on the same level of effectiveness. African Americans are the perfect example of how to teach a race to let you think for them. And that makes me think about the people in power. Think about the most powerful people in this world. These are the people with the most money. When you take a look at the Forbes 400 list, if you ever look at it, it's dominated by every race except African Americans. I'm not talking about celebrity Forbes. Do you realize that there are successful African Americans that are not publicized in the mainstream media for whatever reasons? Do you realize that owners of the organizations who put out the media dominate the Forbes list? The owners of the organizations that these media providers put out dominate wealth. More African Americans should become producers instead of consumers. More African Americans should let go and grow. Why is it that you see purchasing dominated by a race, but the organization or store that sells the product is a different race? For example, when I visit a beauty supply store, the owner may be Vietnamese. Nothing against the race, but the market brings in the money from the African American. Nikki Butler Mitchell has a book titled The New Color of Success that has short biographies of successful African Americans who did not achieve success through athletics or entertainment. Do you understand that the educated African American is dangerous, but the lack of education is the reason you can control an African American? The African American mind is trained as a product from slavery, and slaves were like dogs. We're blinded by a misconception, and we're not taught how to think for ourselves. This creates a person who teaches their kids to do the same, and the cycle continues and goes on and on and on. Most of us are products of what our parents did in life. Some of us even believe we can just go to college and life will map out perfect, but the lack of proper education puts you in the wrong college for the wrong reasons. And most of your family before you never even attended college, so you're just trying to attempt something for family history. See, this audio presentation is the truth. I don't hate another black person. I don't hate another African American. I love people. I'm not against our exploitation. I'm not against our self-destruction. If an African American continues to accept miseducation, you will continue to accept forced miseducation, improper thinking, and making decisions without reasoning wisely. This race has a lower class that is unnecessarily busy doing nothing. This is a free book. This is a free audio presentation. This should motivate you to learn and view life differently before your history is deleted. The absence of color is the miseducation of history. I want the African American to understand Other races sometimes look at you and think they are better than you. Proper education can help you with your life experiences. African Americans cooperate with their own exploitation. Not only does a cigarette kill, but it also costs money. Not only did the gangs influence the black culture, but it also helped kill and jail the vast majority. Not only did the crack epidemic kill, but it imprisoned the body and the mind. Not only did the African Americans dominate the lower class, they dominated the percentage of failing students up to the 20th century. Yes, we have formulated ways through gangs and narcotics to think and perform like businesses, but this has only paved the way for a few. We are a majority. In a time where I look at history and I'm like, it seems we're doing better, a thought should raise in your mind and in your heart on expectations. The search of education is the start of wisdom. Stop participating in our own destruction. Take control of your ideas. Support one another. If the support is not there, move on. Support who will support you. Love yourself and know yourself. Learn and respect your history and do not worry. Under any circumstance, we shouldn't worry. Worrying is a poor use of the imagination. We can do this because the path has been made. Seek the strongest knowledge, especially through math and science. Teach your kids world science and Vedic mathematics. Put them in a position to excel. Don't teach your kids what the TV is teaching your kids. People ask me how I change. I'm about to explain the title a little after I say this. I changed how I looked at myself and my importance to my priorities. For example, your priorities may be God, yourself, and your family. After those, it may be friends, the world, and your hobby. How do you look at your importance to your priorities? How important are you to your family, to yourself? I felt that I was so important to my relationship with the black community as a role model. I had to change. My priorities sparked my change. They asked me why I had the tattoos on my neck removed. It's because you don't live my life. I know people who look up to me. And yes, I have tattoos. I love art, but I remove them from my neck because the people who look up to me are not in the same position as me. I changed my learning process. Some people don't have a learning as a hobby. They don't have a learning hobby. Instead of listening to music in the car, I listen to books. I make sure that I get to at least read at least once a week. That started me trying to at least read once a day. I understand that this audio will inspire other African Americans to do the same, as well as respect and love me. But a, a lot not gonna happen if people don't take heed. You should think about how your ancestors are sabotaged by history. It's a couple things. It's one thing I want to discuss, but I don't want people to to listen to this and think that okay, this is just boring. But I just gotta say this: it's algebra codes and even a scientific method found in Africans' history by broken language barriers. If you were to study art, you'll find out that some painters are considered genius. This is not an art lesson, but artists like Fibonacci and Da Vinci, they're known for what mathematicians call the golden ratio. This ratio proves that the most perfect number in the sequence of dividing the divisor of the last number added to the number 1 plus 1. Now, I don't want to lose nobody. So let's go number 1 plus 1, that's 2. You add 1, that's 3. Now, how did I get to 3? That was 2. So 2 plus 3 is 5. Now, how did I get to 5? By 3. So 5 plus 3 is 8. Now, how did I get to 8? By 5. So 8 plus 5 is 13. So on and so on. 8 plus 13, 21. 21 plus 13, 34. Same thing. Now, you divide the number with the divisor, and this goes on and on and on. It equals 1.6. It's supposedly the Fibonacci code. This sequence is called the Fibonacci code, and it's used in Da Vinci's paintings. It was also found in parts of nature and the human body. Now, the symbol for the Ankh is considered to be the symbol of life. And again, the first people of this world used this symbol to identify the exact same group of numbers. They already knew this 1.6 existed. People who built pyramids, the Sphinx, and temples, they built this using the golden ratio before these artists' time had ever came. The number was used to identify life because they had already understood that even the simplest flower had applied to this outstanding number. Without today's technology, people of the African region, the ancient Egyptians, had noticed the same ratio in plants, nature, and the human body. Now, the title of this audio, which I said I'll explain, is The Absence of Color. I picked this title because, as an artist, I study famous painters and the creators of the color wheel. Now, in the definition of color, there is no such thing as black. And by the painter's rule, black is the absence of color. For example, if you're painting and you don't want color there, you just put black. Now, in metaphor to painting, I feel that this is almost true to the heart of African Americans. And if you listened, you understand why. Now, I've been posting a link here about my book that I want people to purchase. It's not much, don't cost much. And I also recommend African Americans to buy African Creation Energy books. You can go check these books out online. It's not any African books or nothing like that. It's just very insightful for African Americans. It's called African Creation Energy. Thanks for listening. I hope you honestly learned something.